All right, so let's talk a little bit about helping our kids become more independent in their learning. So we had this conversation yesterday in one of my group meetings, and we talked a little bit about it with some of my friends and some of the other people who homeschool as well. And we came up with some topics and ideas about exactly how to kind of encourage more independence in our children. And the first thing was to train and provide opportunity for our kids to learn, or to be independent. So the idea of training isn't so much this whole like rigid structure thing, but it's more just providing opportunities that grow over time to encourage more independent time. So it could be that when they're little, or even when they're not little, that you sit, you read the instructions, you get some feedback from them about whether or not they understand, and then you go ahead and you give them a chance to do it. So, hey, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and then you move to a slightly different space so they still call you if they need to, and then they can do their work on their own. And then next time they have 10 minutes, and next time they have 15 minutes, or whatever, and you can work. Now, these kind of things are really good if you are the kind of homeschool parent that is using a curriculum or have specific projects or programs or lesson plans that you want to complete. If you're doing unschool, well, heck, everything's going to be pretty independent anyways, but it depends on kind of where you're at. So if you have specific work that you want your kids to get done, make sure they understand what is going to be done, what they are obligated to do for the day. Give them a chance to do that. Now, it's really important, I think, as homeschool parents, that we remember that our kids need opportunity. And part of the problem is I know for me, I want to make sure they do it. So I often sit right there and I follow along to make sure that it's been done. And that's one thing that I do. But if I don't give them an opportunity to do it themselves, if I don't ask them to do it, or I don't tell them to do it, or I don't even provide the space for them to do it, they're never going to want to do it independently. Now, I will say there are some situations here where, I'm sorry for the teenagers, some situations here where the learning takes time. It also is dependent on a lot of things, and kids' personalities, their ages, what level of learning they're at, and their understanding it's at. So if you have a young child, they're probably not going to work very well independently. And as they get older, kids tend to work more independently. If you have a child with special learning needs, such as ADHD, those kinds of things, if you don't have tools in place, or they just can't function without having somebody remind them constantly to stay on task, they won't be able to work independently either. There's got to be some realistic expectations about what our children can and can't accomplish on their own at every level, because we all know that kids are independent to a certain extent, but they all have different ranges and levels of what they can do on their own. The next idea is to use visual tools, and some kids work really well by having a list. If they know what they're supposed to do for the day, they can chip away and get things done. I have one of my boys that does this. He loves having the what I need to do today. He actually holds me accountable to make sure it all gets done. Like, Mom, we haven't done spelling. You need to do spelling with me. And I'm like, crap, I forgot about spelling. But he loves the checklist. So if you make a list of what needs to be accomplished in the day, either just the title of the subject, so it's like math, language, science, whatever it is, and they can check off the list, then that's one option that some kids really like. It can also be, here's what your list is for the day, and specific page numbers or specific worksheets or specific projects, so they can see exactly what they have to do. That's an option as well. Another thing is whiteboards are fantastic for the kids who don't do the checklist thing very well, because some of them just like to get rid of the stuff that they've done. So they finish their math, it gets off the board, the list shrinks. Some kids work really well with that. Another option is rewards. And so, and I don't mean these elaborate constructed things where they earn a set amount of stickers and they get, no. It doesn't have to be like this big prize. It can just be, what does your kid want to work towards every day? So if they finish their schoolwork, they can play video games. Or if they finish their schoolwork, we're going to head outside to the park. Or if we finish our schoolwork, whatever. Okay, so the goal is to find something that motivates them to get work done. That way, then they will want to reach the end and they will work towards finishing their work for the day. Some other thoughts is, if your child is working independently, I will say that in the past I had this experience, and it's bothered me for years now, where for 1 year I thought my oldest was working really well by himself. He had a checklist he was doing where he would mark off what he did for a day. Every time I checked on him, he was sitting with his workbooks and notebooks or whatever assignments he had to do. And every time I asked him how it was going or if he had any questions or needed any help, he would say no. And so I never really checked up on him other than that. And so when I got to the end of the year, I thought, wow, we had a great year. He worked really well. And then I grabbed all his books and resources and I looked at them all and I realized that he'd mostly just answered, I don't know, I don't care. So make sure if you're having a child who is working independently that you are keeping tabs on them. And that even works for programs like teaching textbooks, where the program does the lesson for you and the assignments for you and grades for you, because it's easy to slip into the, oh, my kid is doing a great job, and you don't check in, or you just look at you just ask them once in a while how it's going. If you don't check regularly to see what marks they're getting or areas that they're struggling with, because they could be getting like 80% but never understand a specific topic. For example, in that teaching textbooks thing, maybe they don't understand fractions, but they've managed to wiggle through some of the lessons and then get to the sections that they understand, so their grades aren't reflecting their struggles. So make sure that even if you're using an outside program that does the grading or the lessons and all that stuff, that you're checking to make sure that everything is working as well, because you don't want them to be independently learning nothing. Okay, except that things might not work all the time, that different times are going to require different things. For example, my 14-year-old and I need to work together. He needs me to sit with him in order to be successful with his learning plan for the day. If I don't keep him on task, he wanders off and he does something else. So every child, as I said, is different, and every need is different in order to be independent in their learning. So there's my thoughts. If you have any other ones, feel free to leave some comments or questions below, and I'd be more than happy to answer them and see how I can help, or maybe that you can help somebody else.